أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. طيب, questions on last lesson. On the last lesson, we mentioned that during the time of the Tabi'een, there appeared two madrasas with regards to fiqh and understanding the ahkam. What were they? Ahl al-Hadith and Ahl al-Ra'yi. And what was the difference between them, the main difference between them?
Ahl al-Hadith would rely mainly upon Hadith for their rulings, whereas Ahl al-Ra'yi would use their opinions, not that they wouldn't use Hadith, but because there was a lot of fabrication of Hadith, they would use their opinions more. Qiyas basically.
No. So they would, Ahl al-Ra'yi, Ahl al-Hadith would only depend on the Hadith and that which is found in the text. And they wouldn't look into issues that could it happen or could it be and so on. What if? Whereas Ahlul Ra'yi, although they would also rely on the Hadith and the text, because there was a lot of fitan in Iraq, they would rely a lot also on Ra'yi. طيب. With regards to ulum al-fiqh, sciences of fiqh, what are some of the sciences of fiqh, or some of the sciences that are related to fiqh? Ibrahim? Excellent. قواعد الفقهية. أحسنت. صحيح. Fiqh itself. أصول الفقه. So those three, fiqh, قواعد الفقهية, and أصول الفقه, you can look at it as أصول الفقه is like the foundation of the house, and the actual house, the windows, the doors, is fiqh itself. And then you've got the qawa'id al-fiqhiyya, the principles, which is the canopy or the roof. طيب. What else? مقاصد الشريعة. أحسنت. مقاصد الشريعة, the objectives of the sharia. Look, and that initially was a part of usul al-fiqh. It was only during the time of Ash-Shatibi and so on, those sorts of scholars, that it was, and even before them, that it was made into a separate science. What else? The Tarikh al-Fiqh, صح. The history of fiqh. What else? Al-Furuq al-Fiqhiyya, صحيح. And Furuq al-Fiqhiyya is very important because it shows, or you learn, or the faqih is able to differentiate between things that are very similar, like they are different in the ruling. Why are they different? What else? تخريج الفروع على الأصول. And that is when the scholars of a specific madhab, they use the foundations or the principles of their imam to give a hukum to a new mas'ala that they don't have a fatwa for from their imam. طيب. What is the ruling on, or what is a madhab? Al-madhab al-fiqhi. What is a madhab? Everyone should be answering. Revision, if you study in class for an hour and a half, you should study at home minimum 1 hour and a half. What is a madhab? صحيح. ما ذهب إليه الإمام صريحا أو تنبيها. أحسنت. Or أصحابه, or his. نعم. Or his. And that is in issues to do with fiqh. And more so, مسائل that are ijtihadiyya, that we shall see. طيب. What is the ruling on taking a madhab? Permissible. Is it wajib? Is it haram? That's the two extremes. Saying it is wajib to take a madhab, and the other extreme is what? Haram. وخير الأمور أوسطها. طيب. With regards to the madhab of the Hanabila, what are or who's the Imam al-Madhab? Who's the Imam of the madhab? Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal Shaybani rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasi'ah. When did he die? 241 after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The madhab of the Hanabila, what are the main foundations or the main usul for the madhab of the Hanabila? Al-Nusus, ahsant, Al-Nusus. And what does Nusus consist of? Al-Quran wa Sunnah. Al-Quran wa Sunnah. What else? Fiqh dalil based on the Nusus. Sahih. Fiqh dalil based on the Nusus. The opinions of the Sahaba, the madhab of Sahaba. Thirdly, if the Sahaba differ, he would take the one that was closer. Yeah. But he would not invent a new opinion. So if they differed on two opinions, he would not invent a new opinion, rahmatullah alayhi. And that we talked about that in Usul al-Fiqh. طيب. Number 4. سامحني. نعم. So that was from the simat, from the signs of, or the main things that made it stand out from the other madhabs, is that they wouldn't rely so much on what if, and if this happens, if that happens, and opinions and so on. They would only give a rule into a masala that has actually taken place. What else? Qiyas. And before that, al-hadith. Al-hadith, al-da'if, lakin not da'if, that is what we know as today, as a hadith that is mawdu' or fabricated, or a hadith that is extremely weak. It is what we know as hadith that can be known as al-hasan li ghayrihi. طيب. We studied Tabaqat al-Hanabila. With regards to the time frame, we can split them into how many types? 3 types. What are they? Mutaqaddimun, Mutawassitun, and the Mutaakhirun. So the Mutaqaddimun would be from the students of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala right up until Al-Hasan ibn Hamid. Then the Mutawassitun would be from that time up until about 884. And that would be from the start of the students of Al-Hasan ibn Hamid up until Ibn Muflih. And Ibn Muflih from the students of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Ibn Taymiyyah had many students, rahmatullah alayhi, and they were all imams, Ibn Rajab, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Muflih, and so on. So that tabaqa, obviously Ibn Qayyim as well, Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, his students, Ibn Muflih, they would be considered the mutawassitun. Then came the who? The mutaakhirun. And that is kind of when the madhab started to be not laid down foundations, because the mutaqaddimun and the mutawassitun would be doing that. Lakin it was more of a tahrir time, whereby because all of the books were written in the madhab at that time, or the main books of the madhab, they would be choosing and they would mention which one was closer to the nusus of Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhim ajma'in. طيب. What else did the Shaykh mention in the muqaddimah, in the introduction of the book? The introduction is very important for you to know, because you understand what the Shaykh was, the reason why he wrote the book, and what it entails, what he's talking about. What are some of the things, not by memorizing, you don't have to memorize the muqaddimah, like what are some of the things that he said in the muqaddimah?
He started with Basmala, then he went on to explain how this is the mukhtasar of...
Okay, so hold on. So that is a mukhtasar, sahih. So he mentioned it is what? Mukhtasar, it is summarized. And this is the sunnah, or the etiquettes, or the madhab of all of the scholars. In whatever science you're studying, to study a mukhtasar, a book that is summarized, because the books are either mukhtasarat or mutawwalat, although there are books in between. Like, let's say there are mukhtasarat, short books like this book that you have here. Then there are mutawwalat, which are volumes and so on, which talk about different opinions and so on and so forth. Like, for the student of knowledge, at the beginning, when he's studying a subject, he needs to study the mukhtasarat, the short summarized books, in order to understand the later books, in order to understand the books that are more vast in knowledge. And if a student starts with a mukhtasar, it doesn't mean that it is a sign of ignorance. Bil'aks, rather the opposite. It shows that that student understands the methodology of seeking knowledge. Like if a person was to say, I'm going to start a book, like for example, Ibn Qudama has how many books? 4. The first was what? Umdatul Fiqh. The second, Al-Muqni', the one that this summarizes. Then Al-Kafi. Al-Kafi is about all of the madhab of the Hanbali madhab, the khilaf inside and the evidence and so on. What's the last one called? Al-Mughni. Al-Mughni is comparative fiqh. All of the madahib and what they said about this masala and that masala and so on and so forth, and the evidences and the stronger opinion according to Ibn Qudama. What if the student says, you know what, I'm going to start from Mughni. Since I'm going to study Mukhtasarat, the short summarized books, and I want to reach the Mughni, the longer books, why not just start from the top? That is incorrect. Why? Because it is as if you're starting the house from the roof. Can you build a roof without the foundations of the house? It's impossible. What else does the Shaykh mention in Muqaddimah?
That the book is based on the madhab of Imam Ahmed.
Nah. The book is based on that which is authentic, sahih, in the madhab of Imam Ahmed. What else? Nah, he won't mention any khilaf. Does he mention khilaf? Clearly? He uses what word? Law, wa in, hatta. Those sorts of words they point to, and it's not only in this book, like in the books of the madhab, show that there's khilaf. Law, khilaf that is qawi, that is quite strong. Wa in, khilaf that is mutawassid. Hatta, khilaf that is kind of weak. And some say the opposite for hatta and inna. طيب. And the reason was, he mentioned the reason why he authored this book, and he summarized it, rather, not authored, like he summarized it, is because of the al-himam, the aspirations of the students of knowledge at his time were very little. And the awaiq, or the obstructions or the obstacles or things that can prevent someone from seeking knowledge are many. طيب. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, Kitab al-Tahara. Kitab al-Tahara. As we're studying the book, what I want from you as a student, and what you should be doing as a student, is understanding the matan first and foremost. Understand what the Imam means by the words that he is saying. And the benefit of this is that later on, if you're studying with another teacher, or whether it's the same book, you know exactly what is mentioned in that book. And that's what you should do for every single book. Every book that you're studying, concentrate on the words of the book. Concentrate on the words that are written in the book. And some of the books you will find that when they are explaining a book, when they are explaining, or when there's an explanation of a book, sometimes they're explaining the actual mas'ala, وَهِيَ اكْتِفَاعُ الْحَدَثِ وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ. They're explaining the book. So you can see the explanation. And sometimes they're explaining the mas'ala that is being discussed, the issue. So they don't care what the author said. They just explain what he's referring to. Like what I want from you as a student, what we should be doing is studying the words of the mu'allif, so that inshallah when you get to other books, then you can move on from there. Kitab al-Tahara. Ay hadha Kitab al-Tahara. This is the book of Tahara. Kitab is whatever is brought together. Al-Jam' wal-Tam. When things are brought together. Al-Majmu'. And that's why you would find that they would say a group of, مثلا, in warfare, مثلا, a group of people, 10, 20, 30, they would call it a katiba. Because they are a group of people that are going to serve a specific purpose. So kitab here, Kitab al-Tahara, meaning it is the book that compiles all of the masail of Tahara. Kitab al-Tahara. Kitab al-Tahara meaning, here he is saying to you, I am going to bring for you in this part of the book all of the things or many issues to do with Tahara, purification. We understand from that now he's not going to be talking about anything to do with Salah. He's not going to be talking about Zakah or Hajj, just Tahara. And the Fuqaha, they split their books into chapters. Kitab al-Tahara, Kitab al-Salah, Kitab al-At'ima, and so on. And the reason why, so Kitab, and then Bab, and then Fasal. So Kitab al-Tahara. Bab Babul Miyah, chapter of water. And then Fasal. The reason is because they don't want to give you this knowledge in chunks. They want to break it down for you. So they said to you, so he's saying to you, Ya Talib, Al-an we're going to be talking about Kitab al-Tahara, things to do with Tahara. طيب. Also the fuqaha, when they're writing their books, they split it into different categories. They say Rubu' al-Ibadat. Rubu' al-Ibadat. A quarter of they talk about Ibadat, worship. They talk about worship. Zakah, Salat, Tahara, Hajj, and so on. Then they talk about Al-Mu'amalat, dealings, buying and selling and so on and so forth. And why do they start with Ibadat? لأن Allah Jalla wa Ala says وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Because we have been created for the worship of Allah Jalla wa Ala, it is important that we know how to worship Allah Jalla wa Ala. Then comes Mu'amalat. So when a person worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the next thing is that they know Mu'amalat, how to deal, buy and sell, because we all buy and sell. Then they say Rub'u, مثلا, the next is Nikah and Talaq and so on. Fiqh al-Usra, issues to do with the family. Why? Because after you've worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you've served your basic other basic needs, for example, buying, eating, selling, then comes the shahwa of the farj, they say, which is where nikah comes into it. Then they start to talk about jinayat and qada and so on, which is prescribed punishments and judging and so on. Why? Because a person will only need this if they fulfill the basic necessities of buying and selling and so on. طيب. So that is with regards to Kitab al-Tahara. Kitab al-Tahara. Why does the Shaykh start with Tahara? The 5 pillars of Islam are what? Al-Shahada, Shahadatan, Salah, Zakah, and Sawm, and Hajj. You would think he's going to start with Salah, because that is the what? The second pillar of Islam. Like he starts with Kitab al-Tahara, and they start with Kitab al-Tahara. Why? So write down a question. Why do the fuqaha start with Kitab al-Tahara? Why start with Kitab al-Tahara? The answer is that Tahara is the key to Salah. Purification is the key to Salah. And it is the most important condition, or one of the most important conditions for the prayer. Secondly, Tahara is a what? A condition for Salah. You can't pray unless you have Tahara, right? So the Salah, the Tahara is a condition. So the condition comes before what it is a condition for. الشرط يتقدم المشروط. The shart has to come before what? The mashrut. For example, zakah. You have to have over a certain amount of money, wealth, before zakah becomes wajib. If you don't have that wealth, can zakah be wajib? No, zakah will only be wajib once the condition is what? Once the condition is met. Also, they say that التخلية قبل التحلية. أن التحلية تأتي التخلية تأتي قبل التحلية. Which is, when you want to purify yourself, مثلا, let's say it's Eid. The Muslim, on the morning of Eid, do they put their new clothing on first, or do they purify themselves and have a ghusl and then put their clothing on? Which one? They purify themselves first. That is called takhliya. تتخلى عن النجاسات. You're free, you're purifying yourself and you're getting rid of the najasa and the impurities from your body. The second stage is what? A tahliya, that you beautify yourself. which is by putting on your clothing and putting on perfume and so on and so forth. So tahara teaches you to purify yourself, and that is takhliya. Purify yourself from najasat. And tahliya is the salah itself. Ya bani Adam khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid. So then you are now beautifying yourself when you're praying to Allah Jalla wa Ala. So that is why they begin with tahara. The meaning of a tahara is purification. An-nadafatu wal-nazaha. Purification. It is to purify yourself. And tahara is of two types. Tahara is of two types. Just as a benefit, if the teacher, whatever lesson you're in, if the teacher says this is of two types or three types, automatically start to write down. Why? Because he or she is going to mention one or two or three things. And if you don't write it down, then you are going to forget. So tahara is of two types. The first is tahara ma'nawiyya. Tahara ma'nawiyya. And tahara ma'nawiyya is at-taharatu min ash-shirki wal-bid'i wal-ma'asi. It is purifying yourself from shirk, wal-'iyadu billah, worshiping other than Allah Jalla wa Ala, al-bid'a, innovations, and purifying yourself from ma'asi and sins. And that is called tahara ma'nawiyya. It is not something that is tangible. إنما المشركون نجس. The mushrikun are najis. طيب, can we see the najis within their body? لا. Even if they perform ghusl and wash and come out of the shower and wear beautiful clothing, they are still considered what? Najis. Why? Because that is something that is not tangible, but we look at the meaning. إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. The qalb is salim, a qalb tahir. A qalb that is tahir. That is the first type, which is what? Tahara ma'nawiyya. The second is tahara hissiyya. The second is tahara hissiyya, or tahara zahira, which is apparent. A tahara that is tangible, that you can see. And this is what we're going to be studying in this book. This is the type. Because to have wudu, to have ghusl, to remove purities from where you're praying, your sujaya and so on, that is tahara. But it is something that you can see. So that is what we're going to be studying, the second type. So the Shaykh says, Kitabut Tahara. So when he said Kitabut Tahara, we talked about what a kitab is, and kitab just simply means information consisting of the same subject compiled together. Tahara, linguistically, purification, to purify yourself. And it is of two types. Tahara of the inside of the heart, the tahara of the inside of the Muslim, his heart, and that is studied in books of raqa'iq and purifying the characteristics of a person, and aqeedah and so on. The second type is tahara hissiyya, zahira, that purification which is zahir, and that is studied where? Nah. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَهِيَ, what is here? At-tahara. The dama'ir, in the books of fiqh, be very careful with the dama'ir. The damir, huwa, dakhalahu, aw kharajahu, aw akhrajahu, aw. These sorts of dama'ir, you need to know where it goes back to. So when he says we're here, and it is, what is? Tahara, goes back to tahara. We're here, this tahara consists of. Now he is going to say to us, the tahara that I want you to know, that I am going to explain to you, it consists of three things. And it is in the matan that you can see. And I want you to number it, inshallah, on the matan so that it's easier for you to follow later on. We're here, where he says irtifa'ul hadathi, write number 1. Write number 1 on a pencil or pen. Irtifa'ul hadathi. That is number 1. I'll explain it in a minute. Then where he says وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, and that which is in its meaning, وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, write number 2 on top of it. And the third thing is وَزَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ. Put number 3 on top of that. Number 3 on top of that. So this tahara that he already told you about, he is saying it consists of 3 things. What I want you to do tahara of is of 3 things. The first is irtifa'ul hadath, removing and lifting of hadath. Hadath, removing hadath. What can you ask me now? What is hadath? Okay, you want us to remove it. Ya Ustad, Ya Hajjawi, you want us to remove al-hadath. Lakin what is al-hadath? So you write al-hadath. I'm going to give you the definition. Lakin in summary, hadath simply means the fact that you can't make wudu. What is preventing you from praying, that is called hadath. What is preventing you from making wudu. Wasfun قائم بالبدن, وصف قائم بالبدن, وصف قائم بالبدن يمنع من الصلاة ونحوها مما يشترط له الطهارة ونحوها مما يشترط له الطهارة. وصف قائم بالبدن يمنع من الصلاة ونحوها مما يمنع من الصلاة. وصف يقوم بالبدن يمنع من الصلاة ونحوها مما يمنع من الصلاة مما يشترط له الصلاة. And it simply means hadath is to not be on wudu. Hadath means to require wudu or to require ghusl. Lakin it's something that is a description, a trait which is found in the person. مثلا الآن now, who knows who's on wudu? When you look at the person next to you, can you look at him and say, you're on wudu and you're not on wudu? La. Why? Because it is something that is hidden. It is hidden, right? Lakin it is something that a person consists of. Hadath, i.e. this person requires wudu, or this person requires ghusl. So that is the meaning of hadath. And other things that require wudu. For example, let's say tawaf. وَالنَّحْوِهَا, and the like of it, which you need tahara. The like of wudu, or the like of salah and zakah, the like of salah is tawaf, for example, or touching the mushaf, and so on. So hadath is something that is found in the body, and you can't see, lakin it makes a person need ghusl or wudu. And hadath is of 2 types. Hadath is of 2 types. Hadathun asghar, minor hadath, and hadathun akbar, major hadath. Hadathun asghar, minor hadath, is that which necessitates wudu. That which necessitates wudu. So for example, going to the bathroom, akramakumullah, a person urinating, that is called hadath asghar, minor impurity. Why is it minor? Because in order to lift it, you only need to make what? Wudu. Eating camel's meat is what? Minor. Hadathun asghar. Why? Because in order to lift that and to remove that, you need to just make wudu. As for hadath akbar, the major hadath, that is which or what requires ghusl. What requires ghusl. For example, a person being on janaba. When a person is on janaba, don't put the book on the phone on the book. When a person is on janaba, if they make wudu, will that suffice them? La. They need to make what? Ghusl. They need to wash the whole body. So hadath asghar is that which requires ghusl, washing, bathing. Likewise, when the menses ends, when a woman finishes her menses after the 7th or 8th day, can she make wudu in order to start praying? La. She needs to make what? Ghusl. So hadath is that which requires purification, and it is of two types. Hadathun asghar and hadathun akbar. Hadathun asghar is that which requires what? Wudu. Hadathun akbar is what? That which requires ghusl. That which requires ghusl. So far you know the first one of Tahara. The first pillar of Tahara is what? Iktifa'ul hadath. What is hadath? It is a trait, a description found in the body that prevents a person from praying salah. Or anything else that requires a ghusl. And hadath is of how many types? Two types, major and minor. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, and that which is what? Has the same meaning as it. يعني اكتفاء. For example, so you've got number 2, right? طيب. For example, as you know, if a person requires to make wudu, they go to the bathroom and they now need to make wudu. That is called hadath asghar. And that wudu they have done, they've removed what? A hadath. They've removed a person urinates, akramakumullah, and then makes wudu. By making wudu, what have they removed? The hadath. Ahsantum. They've removed the hadath. طيب. Lakin, what about if a person is on wudu? A person is on wudu. Mathalan, you've prayed Maghrib now, and you're on wudu. The time for Isha comes and you're still on wudu. It is a sunnah to make wudu. Sah? You all know that renewing your wudu is a what? Is a sunnah. Tajdeedul wudu, they call it. Tajdeedul wudu, renewing your wudu. Lakin, if you're on wudu already, and then you want to make wudu again as a sunnah, have you removed hadath? La, you haven't removed hadath. So that is what comes under وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ. Another example. They say غُسُلْ يَوْمُ الْجُمْعَةِ. According to the madhab, it is a sunnah. So let's say it is Friday morning and you want to now make ghusl for Jum'ah. Are you removing hadath? Are you removing impurity? No. Likewise, what comes under وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, مثلا, when you're making wudu, what is the minimum necessity, bare necessity of making wudu? How many times? Once. Now let's say a person has eaten camel's meat and now they come to the bathroom, they want to make wudu. When they wash their hand the first time, or let's say when they wash their face the first time, have they not removed impurity? They removed the hadith. What about the second time that they wash their face? And the third time they wash their face? Have they removed hadith? No. Because the hadith was removed by what? The first one. Like in that second one and that third one comes under وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ. Is that understood? وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, i.e. removing of the hadith. Also, when a person is making, مثلا, as you know, when a person wakes up in the morning from their sleep, or when a person wakes up from sleep, the Prophet ﷺ said, let him wash his hands before putting it into a vessel. When the person does this, is he removing hadith?
No.
Is he making wudu by this? La. So this comes under وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ. Lakin it is as if he is removing his hadith or the najasa. Another example is, there's something called salasul bawl. May Allah Jalla wa Ala cure all of the Muslims. Salasul bawl is it's a condition where a person is constantly urinating. Or it's called another condition which is similar, is istihada, where a woman is constantly, blood is coming out of her. It is not menses blood, like it is blood. May Allah cure all of the Muslims. So salas bawl, what this person that's constantly got urine coming out of him, what they should do is they need to make wudu at the beginning of every salah. They need to make wudu at the beginning of the time of the salah and then carry on praying. So let's say Salatul Dhuhr starts at 1 p.m. The person who's constantly having urine, he needs to what? Make wudu after 1 p.m. when the time starts and then pray. Even if the urine is coming out, as we shall see. So this person, has he lifted the hadith up? No, because it's constant. Lakin it is as if he has done so. طيب. The Shaykh says what? اكتفاء الحدث, you've understood that. وما في معناه, you've understood that. وما في معناه. طيب. And the third is what? زوال الخبث. Getting rid of the najasa. Getting rid of the najasa. Khabath, a najasa. Filth. And there's a chapter that is to come with regards to removing najasat. There's a chapter that is to come with removing najasat. طيب. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَزَوَال. And he doesn't say izala. There's a mas'ala that I want you to pay attention here. اكتفاء الحدث. With hadith, you have to go out of your way, right? And you make wudu. صح? So if you want to make wudu, you need to get the water, pour it in your mouth, face, hands, feet, and so on. صح? You need to go out of your way to make wudu or ghusl. Lakin with regards to zawalul khabath, it means getting rid of the khabath. Getting rid of the najasa. Regardless of how it gets rid of it, how we get rid of it. For example now, if a child urinates on, let's say, your thobe or your hijab, you get the hijab and you wash it, or your thobe and you wash it. You've removed it, right? طيب. What about if you put your hijab or the khamis, the thobe, outside and it rains, pours down, and then you come a day later or a couple of hours later, you see the garment and it is clear. And the najasa is not there. Have you removed the najasa? No. Like now that the najasa is off, can you pray in that thobe? Yes. Why? It's no longer there. The most important thing with khabath and najasa is that it is no longer there. Regardless of who gets rid of it. Whether you get rid of it, whether the rain gets rid of it, whether, مثلا, your na'al, your shoes. If you're walking and there's najasa on it, and then you walk for another 20 minutes, and then by the time you get to your destination, it's clean, can you pray in those shoes? Like, did you remove it? No. So that is what is meaning, zawalul khabath, and by lifting or getting rid of the najasa. It doesn't matter how we get rid of it. Is that understood? طيب. What is tahara? Purification. It consists of how many things? 3 things. What are they? Iktifa al-hadath, which is making wudu or ghusl, major or minor. And the second is wama fi ma'na. What comes under wama fi ma'nahu? Renewing your wudu. The second and the third, ghusl. The second and the word and wash of wudu. What else? Ghusl of Jum'ah, if we say it is a sunnah. وَزَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ. What is that? Removing najasat. Removing najasat. طيب. The next question is, write down what is the difference between iktifa'ul hadath, removing hadath, and removing najasa. What is the difference between removing hadath and removing najasa? ما الفرق بين زوال الخبث وبين اكتفاء الحدث؟ ما الفرق بين زوال الخبث واكتفاء الحدث؟ There are three differences. The very first difference is, for the removing of hadath, you have to have a niyyah. Whereas getting rid of najasat, you don't have to have a niyyah. That's coming. Why? Because hadath, making wudu, for example now, pay attention for a second. When you're making wudu, you need to have the niyyah, صح? Because it is a ibadah. Mustaqillah is an independent ibadah. However, for removing najasa, you don't require to make the intention. You don't have to make the intention, because the most important thing is that there is no najasa there. So the first difference between iktifa'ul hadath, removing hadath, and getting rid of najasat, is that for hadath you need to have what? The intention. Like for removing najasat, you don't need to have the what? The intention. طيب. The second difference is that with regards to raf'ul hadath, it is something which is called al-ma'murat, which Shaykh Muhammad just mentioned. It is with the ma'murat you're commanded with. Therefore, if you forget, or if you مثلا are ignorant of it, you are still required to make it up if the time is still close. For example, you now remember that you prayed Salatul Zuhr today with no wudu. You remember you did not have wudu. You've left a ma'mur, something you've been commanded to do. What you need to do is go back or go make wudu and pray dhuhr. Is that understood? You can't say, Qaddarullah, I prayed without wudu. It is what it is, and I'm going to, inshallah, Allah is going to forgive me. You can't say that. Why? Because you've been commanded to do it. It is a command. And that is very important, because a lot of times you will find someone saying they've either forgotten to pray, or they left out a pillar in the salah, or so on. For that sort of person, you say to them, they make it up. They have to make it up. For example, a person says, last Ramadan I didn't fast intentionally. Khalas, you've got to make it up. That responsibility is still upon your shoulders. So that is called the ma'murat. The second is called, or the zawal al-khabath, is called matrukat. They are things that we are meant to leave off. They are things that we are meant to leave off. And you are excused if you forget or if you are ignorant. And you are excused if you forget or if you are ignorant. ignorant of the ruling. طيب. So you've said what? That zawalul khabath is considered from the matrukat, things that you're meant to leave off. And I mentioned two rulings, two things. What were they? You're excused if you forget, and if you are ignorant of the ruling, then you are excused. An example. You realize that Salatul Dhuhr today when you prayed, your thobe had urine on it. A child urinated on your thobe. You realize that that thobe was najis. Or the hijab that you prayed with was najis. But you find out 20 minutes after you prayed. You've prayed already. What should you do? Remember when we said you prayed without wudu? What did we say to that person? What's the fatwa we gave him? Repeat the salah. Muhammad comes to us now and he says, Ya Jama'ah, I prayed and there was urine on my thobe. My child urinated on my thobe, khalas. And I realized that it was najis. And he's already prayed. The fatwa we give to him is not the same fatwa as we give to the person before. We say to him, khalas, wash your garment and next time be careful. Why? It is matruk. It is something that he was not meant to do. Because it was something he was not meant to do or leave off, you are excused for your ignorance. Another example, a person during the month of Ramadan, he eats. We're told to leave off eating in the month of Ramadan, sah? A person wakes up in the morning, as normal, it's the first day, and the first day you kind of forget you're fasting. So you make yourself a big breakfast and you finish, you eat. As soon as you've had the last bite, you realize that you're fasting. It's Ramadan. What do? Do you vomit it out? La, khalas. You've done something that you was meant to leave off. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? إِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ سَقَى. You carry on. هذا فضل الله عليك. You carry on. You preserve your fast from there on. Why? Because you've done something that you was meant to leave off. So that is a difference between ma'murat and matrukat. And it's very important with regards to salah and so on and so forth. طيب. So the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَهِيَ الطَّهَارَةِ. Tahara consisted of how many things? 3. The first, removing hadath. It is of how many types? 2. Major and minor. The second, وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, that which is similar to making hadath, or removing hadath. The third one is zawabul khabath. It is removing impurities from yourself, from your body, your clothing, and the place of prayer. طيب. So the Shaykh rahimahullah, he now leaves that part as the muqaddimah of the book. Kitabul Tahara. What is Tahara? It is XYZ that is mentioned. Then he says rahimahullah, Al-miya'u thalatha. Al-miya'u thalathatun. Al-miya'u thalathatu aqsam. Water is of 3 types. Water is of 3 types, he says rahimahullah. طيب. Why does he start with water? Because the water is the asl for all types of purification. And it is the asl for what? For removing najasat. قال جل وعلا فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا صعيدا طيبا. فلم تجدوا ماء. If you do not find water. You understand from that is if you find water, suffice with that water, khalas. You've got water, make wudu. You don't have water, then go over to something else. So the asl is what? Now, so this is why they start with water. And in general, where it says aqsam, al-miya'u thalathatu aqsam, al-miya'u, anytime you find the fuqaha or the ulama saying that this is of 3 types or this is of 4 types, they come to know this through istiqra' wa tatabbu', by looking into the Quran and the Sunnah and the evidences and they say this is the conditions of salah are 9. The pillars are مثلا 14 and so on and so forth. And that is not a wahy. It is not revelation, meaning if you say water is of 2 types or 4 types, then you've fallen into a sin. La. Whether you say 3 types, 2 types, 4 types, it is a mustalah, it is a terminology. Shurut al-salah, some say 8, some say less, some say more. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you do the conditions. Here he says al-miya'u thalatha. Al-miya'u thalatha. This is the opinion of the madhab. And this is the opinion of the majority of scholars. Last week we said, when we read in the introduction, the Shaykh rahimahullah is not going to go into any khilaf, right? And we're not going to go into khilaf. When we're studying this, we're going to avoid khilaf, because the most important thing for the student of knowledge is that they understand the mas'ala that is being taught. And they have a tasawwur of it. They can picture the mas'ala. Right. Like in this mas'ala, it's important to understand that there's another opinion, especially within the madhab. So the water is of 3 types. The problem is, if we don't understand the other aqwal, or the other madhab, or the other position, we're going to get confused. So write down, water is of 3 types according to the majority of scholars. And according to other scholars, it is of 2 types. And that is a narration in the madhab. If I say madhab, what madhab? Hanbali madhab. It's not ta'asub, it's just we're studying it. Right. And the only reason I'm explaining this mas'ala now, that it's of 3 and it's of 2, because there's actually a difference. If we say 3, then we're going to have to go through all of the masail that the Shaykh mentioned. But if we say it's 2 types, then these masail don't even come into it. It doesn't concern us, these masail. We're going to study it, and I want you to understand both opinions. The first opinion is that it is what? 3 types. And that is what the book is based upon. And the evidence for this is a dalil from dalilun naqli, meaning dalil from the sunnah, or the evidence is from the Quran and Sunnah, and a dalil from the aql. As for the dalil that is from the Quran and the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ was asked about the bahar, water, the sea water. The Sahaba said to him, Ya Rasulullah, we go on the sea, we go travel by sea, and we carry a little bit of water with us. So obviously if we drink that water, then we won't have enough water to make wudu with. And if we make wudu with it, we won't have enough water to what? To drink. So what should we do? They asked him about the purity of the sea water. And he said, هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. The Prophet ﷺ said, هو الطهور. Right. Sorry. Go back one step. I said how many types was the first opinion? 3. Write down طهور طاهر نجس. طهور طاهر نجس. It is of 3 types according to them. And on the other side of the page, right? And those that say it is 2 opinions, the water is طهور, pure and purifies. طهور and najis. طهور and najis. Okay. So those that say it is of 3 types, okay, they say to you that water, obviously, فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً, you don't find water, then you make wudu. They say that water is normally what you can make wudu with, and what you can drink, and what you can purify yourself with. Sah? So they say, well, the Prophet was asked, and he said, هو الطهور الماء الحل هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. The Prophet said to them that the water, sea water, is pure, right? They say, the fact that the Sahaba asked them if they can make wudu with this sea water, it shows that there are 3 types. There's water that is tahurun, that they knew of, and water that is tahir, that you can't make wudu of, although you can see the seawater, because they know the seawater is not what? Najis. They know it's not dirty. They doubted whether you make wudu with it or not. Okay, let me repeat. They asked the Prophet ﷺ, can we make wudu using seawater? Sah? They obviously know that the water in the sea is not what? Najis. They know it's not filthy. They knew it is clean. They knew that it was clean, right? But they wanted to know if it was clean enough to make wudu with. So they say the companion's question affirms a third type, which is tahir, water that is pure, like you can't make wudu with it. Is that understood? طيب. So they say water is of three types. Water that is tahur, clean. Water that is tahir. Tahir means it is clean itself, but you can't make wudu with it. Is that understood? And the third is what? Water that is najis. Obviously you can't make wudu with it. Is that understood? Okay. As for the second opinion, they say water, ya jama'ah, don't confuse us, is of two types. Water that is pure, that you can make wudu with. And najis, water that is najis. Khalas. Why are we doing tawaf around tahir, tahur, they say? Water that is tahir, tahur, we can make wudu with it, we can drink it, and we can what? Purify ourselves with it. Khalas. Everything is found in that water. And the second type is najis, ma'un najis, and we can't make wudu with it. What do they make the difference? What is the boundaries? Their border is what? The borderline for them is what? Whether it's najis or tahir. This water now is what? How do you know? Huh? How do you know it's tahir? Okay, if it wasn't in this bottle and if it was in a cup, how would you know it was tahir? Would you make wudu with it? But how? How do you know? You're right. Huh? Aslul ma is what? The asl of water is what? طيب. When you look at it now, you're going to think what? You're going to see it's clean. Khalas. You know when you look at it, it's clean. Like, what if we put, مثلا, if a person urinates in it and it comes out yellow and it was in a bottle like this and it was closed, you're going to drink it? You're going to make wudu with it? But why? Because you can see. So the hadd al-fasil between them, the difference, the border is, if we look at it and it's water, باقي على أصل خلقته, if it is باق as it was, if it is still as it was, and we can see that it is water, خلاص, then it's clean. If we can see that it is filthy, then it is what? Najis, and we can't make wudu with it. Is that understood? Water is of how many types? Three types, according to the book that we're studying. طيب. The first, ma'un tahur, water that is pure and you can make wudu with it. You can drink it, it is pure within itself, and you can make wudu with it. The second type is what? Tahir, it is pure, but you can't make wudu with it. And the third is what? Najis. The second opinion was what? Two types. Tahur, water that is pure, and water that is najis. Water that is najis. طيب. These masail that the Shaykh is going to mention now, we can only picture them if we take the first madhab. Is that understood? For example, he's going to talk about water that has been mixed with, let's say, leaves of the trees, or water that has been used by someone to make wudu. So he will say, or so they will say that water is tahir, lakin it is disliked to use, and this water is not disliked to use, and so on. Everything he's now going to say is based on the fact that water is what? Three types. طيب.
وقل رب زدني